friends, it has been a long time. I apologize. Did you miss me? I missed you. So I'm going to do another kind of adventures in streaming episode. These are often helpful interstitial episodes between a formal Blu-ray review or an extreme forgotten dive. So anyway, one thing I wanted to mention on my last video that I posted the other day, which I actually had recorded a few days prior with plans for the channel, was I am going to try to improve the lighting and eventually the sound, but the lighting I can do a little bit easier. So I'm going to try to do some front lighting once I can get another lamp in here. All of my extra money that isn't going towards bills and transportation or things for the house or the cat, or going towards alleviating my constant heat wave situation. So I had a tower fan. I bought a tower fan of $70. It hurt, but I found some other similar ones for a bit cheaper where I work. That will be my next home investment. Desperately needed. But hopefully in the near future I can get a relatively inexpensive lamp that can kind of just help the lo-fi stuff pop. I mean, you guys don't really get to see how blue my eyes are, and that's a bummer. And but like right now the day light is pretty good, and it's not an obnoxious backlight. But like I do this, and this is good. I like this, but kind of washes some of the color out of it. So watch me while I kill. No, watch me while I experiment here. Hey, I like that one. Okay, we're gonna go with that one for now. So in any case, here I am, and I watched 2 movies on Shudder recently. Shudder is available to me via the largesse of channel patron Shelly Druckrey. Thank you. And I'm going to nail down 2 of these movies. These are hot takes. These are movies that I had never heard of in my life before I happened upon them on Shudder. Just minding my own business, leafing through stuff, and then so I have a very curious mind. So don't let anyone ever kill your curiosity. That's one of the greatest things about being a creative person. Keep your horizons open. The first one I want to talk about is ALISON'S birthday. So I'm probably going to do a little bit of cheating note here and there because I haven't memorized much about it, and there's not a lot of information on Shudder about it. I did look up the Wikipedia page a few days ago, but I don't remember a lot. So let me just tell you real quick the basic stuff, and then I can get into the movie. So it's directed by a cat named Ian Coughlan, and it is an Australian film from 1981. So when I saw Australian 1981 horror, and it looked like it had a cult edge to it, I thought this could be an interesting thing to check out. I haven't checked out many movies like that. From that era, from Australia, I don't know. It just like, what's that like? Does it feel like a slasher movie? Does it? I don't know. Anyway, it doesn't feel like a slasher movie. In some weird ways, it reminded me of Dark August that I reviewed on here a couple months back, which was part of the American Horror Project box set series. That was one that I'd never heard of before Shudder either. But shame on me, I should have read about it and intend to one day in the great book Nightmare USA by Stephen Thrower, where it's pretty much an entire history of American low budget genre filmmaking from the 60s to the 80s. And Dark August is definitely in the vein of the terrain he covers. So this one, yeah, it's got some cliches, and towards the third act, I started predicting like what was going to happen. I'm like, okay, now I bet this is going to happen. That would happen. Um, but that happens to me a lot these days, especially with horror films, revelations. I think I'm just getting better overall at sensing these things too, from writing scenarios. You start to feel certain patterns, and you hope that someone will surprise you and go down a different path, and it'll still be rewarding and make sense within the context of the work. But you know, so I take them one by one on a case by case basis, pretty much. In this case, the characters well, when we start out, they're having a Ouija board fest, and we're told like Allison at age 16, and they're having a Ouija board fest. Allison and these other two girls. So the girl who's kind of leading the seance, she starts asking questions. And at first, the other girl's like, "You're just pushing it." And she's like, "No, no, it's really moving." And the movement of the item, I forgot, it was like a bottle, upside down bottle or something. Again, this was a very cheap Ouija board. In Australia, people can't afford expensive planchettes for the planchettes that we call Ouija boards. I'm just kidding, but it was pretty well done overall. I mean, of course, in a way, already kind of predictable that it's gonna, be it's going to portend disaster for one of these girls, and it warns Allison specifically of the girls, don't go home for your 19th birthday, and then things kind of freak out, and everything gets overturned, and an explosion, and a bookcase falls on the girl who's been leading the seance, because after the warning, a voice takes control of her. And again, the skeptical chick over on the side is like, "Stop with that voice! Come on!" And it's it's pretty effective. And I'm a sucker for things like that. Like obviously Mercedes McCambridge in Exorcist. But I even think the voice in Beyond the Door is pretty effective. Now, when I was a little kid, I used to watch, not regularly or by choice, but the ad for Beyond the Door would come on, and that voice going through Haley Mills, that Juliet Mills, that thing scared the living fuck out of me. And I had not heard the Mercedes McCambridge voice at that time yet, or I probably would have. I don't know. I might not be here now. So this voice wasn't like ominous and horrifying like that. But it's kind of like a male, sort of masculine voice talking through her. And it kind of reminded me of some of the Evil Dead voices in the first Evil Dead movie. And, it's basically, they're like, "Who is this?" She's like, "It's your father," and talking to Allison. And he's trying to warn her, but all hell breaks loose. So the young lady who became the vessel for this spirit is killed in the skirmish, and there's ambulances and police, and So then we skip to Allison, like 18 years and whatever months. So T minus, the countdown has begun towards Allison's 19th birthday. Now, even though that's only like 2.5 years tops, she doesn't seem to have much memory of this. I don't know if that's because it seemed unbelievable and it was crazy. I don't know if I'd ever forget any of the details. I remember my only Ouija board experience, which happened when I was 10 years old. I mean, no one died, and their bookcases fell over, and no one spoke with a exorcist-like voice. But I remember it to this day. I remember how the Ouija board felt, and it definitely was. My friend, I was doing the seance. Well, it wasn't really a seance, whatever ritual with Thomas Davis. It definitely wasn't him pushing. At first, he did, but yeah, I still remember how it felt. That thing was definitely moving by some other force. Whether you believe me or not, that's your choice. But that's what happened. I was there, and so Allison, has a boyfriend. They're starting to get a little more serious. I don't even know if they've had sex yet when we first meet them. Though that's taken care of relatively quickly. and he's a nice guy named Pete, and you know, uh, they're affable kids, you know. I mean, and 19, I mean, she's pretty much an adult, right? So what we started to learn is that, you know, I got the impression that the father speaking through the girl was dead, and I think there's an illusion that they died in a car accident, her parents, when she was young. Um, and so Allison is kind of on her own, chilling out, and her birthday's coming up, and she gets a call from this aunt of hers, and we're not told, you know, exactly how the aunt or uncle are related uh, biologically to the deceased parents, um, but they're her aunt and uncle, and apparently they raised her, so they were somewhere around when the Ouija incident took place. Um, so they're immediately unlikable. The aunt seems she seems the actress seems very old to be playing the part. I mean, rather old. I mean, I know people married later back then and etc. But you know, I can only assume she's the much older half sibling of one of her dead parents. That's my first speculation. Of course, that was wrong, but what did I have to go on? And she's kind of one of these busybodies. You know, of course, I insist you must come home. You know, she's like, no, I don't need to come home. And you know, I just feel like, nope, not coming home. You know, but of course, Allison has this sentimentality that's going to be her doing. That was the first kind of cliche thing I didn't like. Even though it was necessary to move the story along to what it was, it still was like, okay, I've seen this a million times. Obviously, your aunt's a bitch, but yeah, she's telling her boyfriend, yeah, but they were so good to me. They took me in, they kind of raised me. But they're really old fashioned and they're really, you know, she makes 5,000 excuses for their frankly bizarre and obnoxious behavior. Well, when we meet the uncle, he's, you know, he does seem a bit younger than the aunt, but he's extremely sleazy and unlikable, pushy to an extreme, very stodgy, seemingly conservative bloke. And so, you know, Pete goes with her out there. He goes to stay with his uncle, who's actually a cool dude who races cars for fun. And he's like an aging hippie. So that was, you know, he, I think, is presented as the contrast to Allison's maladjusted, you know, parents. Sorry, aunt and uncle. So she goes there, and you know things are pretty damn boring with the aunt and the uncle, and all they do is like tell her what to do, tell her we want to spend more time with you. We haven't seen you, you know, guilt trip after guilt trip. And I've had relatives like this. I mean, and I'm just like, you get to an age, and you're like, at 19, I was probably right about that age. So I kept hoping Allison would be like, fuck all, aunt, whatever. I'm gonna do me own thing, you know. And of course that, well, it kind of happens, but it takes a long time to happen. And so of course weird things start happening and little sounds. And I gotta say the pacing is good, the editing is good, the sound are good. So even though some of this is stuff you've seen a million times before, or kind of know what, well, you think you know what it's building toward, uh, it's pretty well done. I think the supernatural elements, like the what the fuck is going on phenomena kind of thing, where is this going of the plot, I think that's pretty well structured and pretty well done. Uh, the characters, you know, Pete and Allison are affable and believable. It's just when the cliches come up about resisting the family. And the aunt and uncle, unlike Pete's uncle, who seems just like a cool guy, just an average cool OC guy, the aunt and uncle are weird. And I kept thinking, man, this is going to just be like Rosemary's Baby, where the whole movie she's never going to think anything's wrong. She lets everyone talk her into thinking it's all in her head. And you know, Rosemary's Baby is one thing. Uh, Love it or hate it, or in between. But when that is attempted by other filmmakers, it can wear on me. I lose patience kind of early. Um, the whole Kafka-esque thing, paranoid, it has to be done masterfully, or it isn't believable. It's just not authentic. Now, those were different times when Rosemary's Baby came out, and even 1981. I don't think anyone would buy this kind of thing nowadays. You know, it would be like, well, you raised me and everything, but piss off. Um, and she does start to go get suspicious and afraid, and she decides to spend her afternoons leading up to her birthday with Pete. She's invited Pete to the birthday party. Of course, the aunt and uncle lose their minds over this. He's an outsider. Literally inviting an family. I'm doing British accents instead of Australian. I'm trying, but I just keep lapsing. I'll try to stop doing that. I'll try to stop doing the accents if I can help it. But they're just so pompous, and that's predictable. Like, of course they say all that, and of course, even though she doesn't agree, she's like, okay, at first. But then she finally grows a backbone after a couple of days. She's like, no, I'm 19. I'm going to do whatever I want to do. And I'm like, you go, girl, finally. She's like, I'm going to bring Jeff around and I'm going to do this. So this is when we really, the intimations turn into a more open indication that Dan and Uncle are, yes, they are weirdos. We're not just imagining it. We're not just being judgy about their eccentricities. They're old fashioned and believe in the old ways. They believe in some old ways, all right, but way, way, way older than any of us. And we realize that they're gaslighting Allison, and so Allison starts spending more time with Jeff, and they have an afternoon at the hippie uncle's house when he's out revving up his engines, and it's pretty nice. I mean, they have a nice relationship. They get along well. They're funny. They're intimate. It's not graphic sex, but it's believable. There's believable lustfulness happening, and but it doesn't go too far because it's not really like that kind of exploitation movie. But it's nice that it's in there. It's nice that there's a contrast that yes, these young people and the uncle, the hippie uncle are normal in the sense they're healthy. They're healthy people who are doing healthy things. They're not these old stodgy weird nut jobs. But it turns out these people are much more than just conservative, uptight, controlling, overly protective parental nut jobs. They're complete nut jobs. So finally, Allison's uncle threatens Jeff, and of course that alone is like it does set Jeff off. And of course Jeff starts sneaking around and doing things to help Allison and figure out what the hell is going on. None of this makes any sense. Why can't Jeff come to the birthday? What's up with the birthday? And then Allison gets sick. And they bring in this doctor, and he's kind of a, he kind of is obviously a, he's not as subtle as Saperstein and Rosemary's Baby. And I personally thought that character wasn't subtle at all. And I thought Rosemary was being an idiot. You can take this little pill here. I do a tannis, everything will be okay. But I'm in pain. It'll be fine. And then they're like, Dr. Saperstein is the most respected doctor in New York, eh? And you're like, no, come on, Rosemary, wake the fuck up. Hello. And this doctor he makes Saperstein look kind of subtle. So he tends to Allison, and then finally it's the old, go away, Jeff. She needs rest. She'll call you later. Barely concealing that they just hate his guts. And then it gets to a point where he decides he goes to see a friend of his, maybe an ex-girlfriend, and she's like a hippie gypsy, and a gypsy. She is an occultist. She has a shop, but they talk quite a bit. They have a nice conversation. Again, a very believable naturalistic conversation. I liked that element of the movie. I liked that element of Dark August, that kind of naturalism to the dialogue between people. And again, she's a very healthy minded, open minded person. And she doesn't really practice the occult anymore because she says, she sees where that can lead. So, so you're getting that strand that, okay, there's occultism, and then of course there's black magic, witchcraft, and this doesn't directly conflate witchcraft and black magic. I'm glad, though many people stupidly do. And then, of course, there are people who are like, well, black magic's not all that bad. This is all a belief system thing. It's very personal, I think, as far as practicing. But she gives him good, valuable information. And, he being a curious lad, goes to the library and starts to look up some clues. And basically, he finds, see, a lot of this revolves around dates and numbers. I like that element, too. Like, she's born on the 9th day of the 9th month of whenever. And it'll be her 19th birthday. So 19 becomes the holy number to this particular cult called the Cult of Myrna, who Sal, that's her name, the gypsy shop owner tells Jeff about. So that's the first he's heard of this Myrna. So now, Alison's had a dream about them where there's like a ritual and they're, putting this young lady up to the stone, and it's kind of like a little mini Stonehenge, and there's a light, kind of this, it's a fairly good effect for the time, an optical kind of lightning effect coming through, and you see the aunt and the uncle there, and you see Alison herself there. So it's very strange, and of course, obviously, it's not just a dream. It wasn't a dream at all. It's really happening. And like an idiot, another stupid thing that happened was she had gone wandering in the woods and actually found this little baby Stonehenge in their woods and behind their house. Asked her uncle, and he's like, "Oh yeah, a guy he used to live here. He built one. He wanted to test the theory that it was an ancient calendar." And she was like, "Oh, okay, uncle. Stonehenge is in the backyard. Okay, no problem. I mean, just okay. I did the wrong accent again. My Australian friends are gonna hate me. But it really it's strange credulity, truly. But like I said, Alison starts to come around, but a bit too late. Jeff, when he learns some of these revelations about Myrna and this cult and the baby Stonehenge she's already told him about, and starts finding out about her birth records, and the fact that the parents who were dying in the car accident, they were her parents. They did die in a car accident, but she was stolen from them when she was a young child, very young, and they never uncovered her before they had the accident. So that's really saying something, that the spirit of the father comes through that girl when Alison's 16. I think that's actually a pretty powerful plot point, because, she doesn't even remember her real father. So, of course, she's in no way biologically related to the Smyrna cultists. I mean, the Myrna cultists. And thank goodness, because who would want to claim those two, fossils? And so Jeff does the logical thing. I'm kind of joking. Pete does the logical thing and goes to kidnap her out of the house. I mean, it's kind of charming in its naivety. Of course, he gets caught. The police come, and you don't know. It's hard to tell if the police are in on it or not. But they are police, so naturally they give Pete a tally ho, or we're arresting you, mate. And there, now I did that one right, mate. And I love Australia. Actually, I'd like to visit there. I have a lot of Australian friends there. Scott Bruce is one of my favorites, and Michelle Westmoreland. They're my Facebook friends, and Scott Bruce is actually we'll get into him another time. But anyway, So he can't get away with it. And then the doctor comes back, the old unsubtle, sinister doctor who Pete looked up and found no records that he even exists, much less he's a doctor. I got to give it to Pete, man. He's got his shit together. So they hypnotize her a little too easily, in my opinion. They hypnotize her, and when Pete and the police come back, she says that he did try to kidnap her. They just went on a few dates, and he was mean, and he wouldn't take no for an answer, and now he's trying to kidnap her. And she's a little kind of, glassy-eyed saying all this, but the cops are like, of course he is. Of course he's a reprobate, degenerate, stalking scumbag. And so Pete makes a getaway, and the time draws nigh. So Alison's very physically ill during this period and doesn't remember the hypnosis, doesn't remember this, what's the word, disowning Jeff. And, but right on her birthday, she's like, where's Jeff? I'm really dizzy. And she's back to her, like, it's like a couple of days have gone by. She barely remembers they happened. She thinks everything's still kind of happening. And unfortunately, she's still trusting these two old coots. But, the thing is, she is kind of like not quite in her right mind, and she's not feeling good physically. She's not coherent. And, well, they basically lead her out back to the baby Stonehenge. And, of course, there's all these cultists in robes chanting, which were in her dream. And of course, yes, Mom and Dad, which Pete and Sal already figured out, half hour earlier. The aunt and uncle are also in the cult, and the doctor's in the cult, and it becomes one of those kind of films. And there were a lot of films like this in the 70s, and of course, they're not all like masterpieces like The Wicker Man. But, when you find, or Rosemary's Baby, when you find, oh, they're all in on it. All of them witches. And, but they worship a very specific kind of being, a Celtic goddess that, well, she wasn't exactly a goddess. She was like a witch, a sorceress of great power who achieved immortality by trading bodies every 84 years. There's number stuff again. And 19 was her number. She always selected a 19-year-old girl. She's been doing this for like a couple of thousand years. And it is said that she worshipped and was a emissary of the great old ones. Now, I assume that was capital G, capital O from our man Lovecraft. So that was kind of cool. So even though Myrna is not a character, to my knowledge, that occurs in Lovecraft, and I haven't researched to see if she's any kind of real Celtic witch that may have lived or been a legend. I liked the story. I thought this was cool. So, I mean, even the baby Stonehenge started to kind of, in its absurdity, started to kind of add to the whole vibe of this thing. And these people, they turn out to be exactly what you think they are, really, when you first meet the aunt and uncle and doctor. They really are just evil scumbags. There's one brief scene before they go downstairs to do the ritual where the aunt goes very uncharacteristically, totally out of left field. Again, this is one of my caveats I had with the movie. Oh, I've come to grow a bit fond of Alison. It's really a shame. The doctor's like, don't you say that. This is what must be. And I thought, maybe if that character, the aunt, there had been any foreshadowing that she had an ounce of humanity, or there was any kind of genuineness in their interaction, or there was any kind of non-toxic, attitude that the aunt had, because all the aunt acted like towards Elsa was a stern, rigid, authoritarian figure, very patronizing. You go to bed, kind of, there was no love there. I didn't see any, a little bit of, oh, hello, dear. but it was always followed by a guilt trip. You really should be spending more time with us and not that dreadful boy. Again, like I said, cliches abound, and so I actually thought that scene was a little annoying. I thought if you're going to create a sociopath, make them a sociopath. I could go on about this subject. It's a pet subject of mine that occurs in certain movies and stories that I hate it when they do it. Because unless there's like a groundwork laid for it, or there's an evolution of the character, I'll give you a good example quickly. Daredevil season 3. Now, if you've read the comics, if you haven't, it doesn't matter. But if you read the source material, Bullseye is just a sociopath. He's a total scum. But for some reason, they decided to try to create a backstory as to his psychopathy and maybe create a little sympathy for him. And that's the only thing I didn't like about Daredevil season 3. I thought, you're actually going to try to make Bullseye sympathetic. That's a bridge too far. But, it was well done. It's fine. I mean, I got what they were doing. Kingpin sees his inner darkness and nurtures it and brings it out. And also they conflate the criminal that Kingpin had impersonate Daredevil when he was out of commission with Bullseye. So that Bullseye's costume and persona as a villain isn't the Bullseye, but in season 3, it's Daredevil himself, the red suit Daredevil. So you have Daredevil versus Daredevil. Okay, I've talked enough about Daredevil. Sorry, it's an obsession. But that was just an example that came to mind. So I'm not buying the aunt gave a fuck. So they're out back, they're doing their thing, and Pete pops up. He's had an appointment with Sal, and he's got a silver bullet, I believe. His father had a gun, or maybe uncle. Yeah, his uncle had a gun. So he collects guns. They mentioned some of this early on, so they did set some of that up. I think that part of the narrative went smoothly. I thought Pete's whole arc as a character, as presented by this unknown to me actor, and the hero of the piece, I liked him. I thought he was very, very well done, well portrayed. The sad thing is, I just maybe call it predictability, maybe a dread, maybe pessimism, maybe watch too many horror movies with this certain kind of twist, especially from that era. Because nowadays, you rarely have horror movies where all the good guys die, or nothing about their mission to change things has any effect. Usually it has some effect to help. So these weren't those days. So not having seen a lot of Australian horror films from that era, I wasn't sure. But I was kind of like, I kind of hope it has a bad ending, a evil triumphs ending, and I kind of hope it doesn't, because I liked Pete and Allison. So in that sense, there was some successful storytelling that worked for me personally, despite all the cliches and contrivances to get to all that buttressed, that bit of verisimilitude. You had all this, kind of almost hokey stuff going on from time to time. But the mood and atmosphere is pretty good throughout. And when you finally get to the, of course, scene where they take her down there, and then they try to merge her with the Stonehenge slab, and you find out that Grandma, who they've encountered, I was remiss, I didn't mention Grandma Thorne, who's like 103, and she's like, they bump into her early on in Allison's stay, and Allison's like, who's that? And they're like, oh, that's your Grandma Thorne. You don't remember her? She's like, no. She's like, oh, of course you do. And Allison's like, no, I don't. And then it's never brought up again. She just said, oh, that's my grandmother. She's 103, Pete. And, Pete encounters her, too, at one point. And he's like, it's the oldest woman I've ever seen in my life. And butchering the accent yet again. And she is pretty craggy looking. It looks like it was genuinely an old woman playing the part, but also augmented by some makeup. And the old woman is there. And what you have figured out through Sal's occult knowledge is that the woman, Myrna, the identity she has taken through the ages, uh, is Isabel Thorne. Now, I want to back up for a minute, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong in the comments. Myrna is kind of the being I explained was the one that gets recycled every 84 years. Now, I may have that wrong. It may be that Myrna is like a goddess or an emissary of the great old ones, yes, but like a minor goddess. And Isabel Thorne is like a witch who was her, who Myrna was her patron and did her doing. So I'm a little confused on that. Part of that's me not memorizing all the plot details. I admit. Part of it's the film being a little. I mean, Sal explains it pretty well, but at the same time, So I'm going to blame myself for that important point, fucking that up. But I could blame the film. I don't know. What should I do? Isabel Thorne, though, is the being that's being recycled. That's the name she's taking. So that's why I called her grandma. Supposedly, Alison's great-grandmother, who now, of course, we know is not because aunt and uncle aren't biologically related to her at all. So she can't be the husband's grandmother, which they said she was, the uncle's grandmother. So she does start merging with the thing, and he takes his gun, and I think he does get a silver bullet or two. I mean, you cannot go wrong with the silver bullet thing. I mean, the scene in The Howling where Dick Miller's is selling the stuff, and Dick Miller's telling him all the lore, and they're like, "Do you have silver bullets?" And he's like, "Of course I got silver bullets. Here they are." And they're like, "Do you think these are going to work?" He's like, "No, of course not. But they'll sell." It's like, and silver bullets, my ass, they do work. So, silver bullets is the way to go. If you're ever in any of these kind of situations, get someone to forge you a silver bullet or find you one. So, all three of these, well, both of those films do this, but I say three because I'm going to review another film on this video that also the silver bullet is the key to happiness, or at least the dispatcher of unhappiness, hopefully. If something doesn't go terribly wrong. So, Jeff's there and he's got a cross. And Sal's like, just take it just in case. And it sort of wards them back like a few inches, but not much. And he's holding the gun and he's threatening to use it. And he grabs Allison, and Allison is, kind of in the middle of the transformation. Now, the old lady in the wheelchair is over here. So that's Isabel Thorne. She's waiting for that power for the exchange to happen. And the way I read, again, this could be me or it could be the movie. The way I read it initially was Allison will die and go into the stone and die, and Grandma Thorne will suddenly turn into a 19-year-old. Well, no, it really is a switch of bodies. And that I didn't quite understand, but it made the ending much more effective. Again, a little predictable once you're right up to it, but a little more effective. And she says, "Throw the cross at them! Throw the cross! Let's go!" And he kind of like, for a split second, he's thinking, well, throw it at them. Are they going to all blow up when, what, are their faces going to melt like devil's rain? So he does it, and he grabs her, and they're running. And then here you go, plot device. This has been done a million times. Usually it's the woman this happens to, I guess. So I guess this was kind of a radical twist at the time. This is the Australian take on the helpless female. The helpless male, our hero. "I've wrenched my ankle, I can't move. You go on without me, Allison. Take the gun." So immediately, I was like, first of all, he wrenched his ankle. I mean, I've seen it happen to male characters. I think there's isn't there like a Fulci movie where the zombie hurts the guy's ankle and he limps around? It might be zombie. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, and the woman carries it. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but it's usually the female somehow hurts her ankle for some reason. I'm glad there's some equity going on. There's some parity and some representation here in the horror trope, some diversity in the horror tropes as early as 1981. Another plus for this film. So he's fucked. I don't know why he just doesn't just run with her or have her carry him like all the other movies I just mentioned, but I guess he thinks he's doomed. So I'm thinking, how fast is Pete's mind racing? Like, I threw a cross at them. I'm not sure that should have done anything, but maybe it blew them up, or their skin melted, or it warded them off, and bought us time. But they're going to be on me any minute and kill me. I won't be able to get away. So it's important that Allison gets away, because she's my girlfriend. And that she doesn't, hasn't been victim of this ritual. But once I quickly got over the cliche in real time, my mind raced to another thing, is that the expression on Allison's face, because she's slightly behind him, he's like, come on. She's pretty dispassionate, pretty much like, my ankle's wrenched. And she's just kind of like, so, when your boyfriend is fleeing from these evil murdering cultists and then he's suddenly handicapped, I don't expect that to be your reaction, especially when you're the intended victim of the cult. So when he gives her the gun, though, that's when I'm like, okay, yes, she's going to kill him. She's not really Allison anymore. Hello. And yeah, it does happen. But as she's getting ready to shoot him, I thought, okay, something's going to happen, and, he won't get shot. Somehow he'll knock her down and limp to safety. But so even though I predicted exactly what was going to happen, I was glad they went through with it, because once again, the downbeat ending, if I have a choice, I'd rather go with the downbeat ending. Because seriously, the odds against them were not great. Jeff running around from the magic shop to the library, mostly on foot most of the day. It's supposed to be a very small town. Oh, he's got a dune buggy. Yeah, he did drive a dune buggy sometimes. And they couldn't get to the dune buggy in time. They do chase him in the dune buggy once. I thought it was cool he had a dune buggy. I love those, and I'm like, I'm used to like a 1971 American film with a dune buggy, but this is like a 1981. Is that an Australian thing in the 80s, a dune buggy? My Australian friends tell me. But it added another level of kitsch and fun to the film visually. He can't get to the dune buggy. He ain't getting into that dune buggy ever again, baby. And so, blam, he's dead, and that's it. So then, of course, for our benefit, maybe for the dying Jeff's benefit, because I can't remember if she tells him this before she shoots him or after she shoots him. I guess it was right before she shoots him, yes. She says, you should have known not to throw away the cross. If you'd held on to it, I might still be Allison. That's right. And then he kind of reacts like, oh, fuck. And then she kills him. So I don't know how much is true of that or not. It was hard to read her face when he was grabbing her from the stone. It looked like she had kind of a dispassionate face then. Like maybe she already had Isabel Thorne inside her. But she herself, maybe she's lying to Jeff and just saying, nah, if you hadn't thrown away the cross and listened to me. But she did tell him to throw away the cross very vigorously. So I think the cross would have given him a chance. And maybe a chance to get that spirit out of Allison, keep it at bay. And then he could have shot grandma or auntie and uncle with the silver bullets. The pace of this scene was good, though. It was suspenseful. If you're the kind of person who watches this and these kind of, maybe I'm a harsh critic. Excuse me. I'm being vain. if you're a harsh critic like me, not a harsh critic like me, or a couple of my other friends who saw this movie around the same time I did, basically my recommendation. You might be just like, that played out pretty well. I mean, they almost made it, twist ending, but like I said, the contrivances dilute it, but nonetheless, it was fun. Um, and then we have the twist ending, and that's when it all becomes more clear to me personally. There may be some eagle-eyed viewers who figured this out many frames back, but um, I thought, well, okay, Allison's Isabel Thorne. That's it. That old lady keels over. But no, it's a total swap, body swap, and they wake up Grandma, but she's talking like Allison, and she's just waking up, and she's like, "Where's the birthday? Where's Pete?" And like, "Pete went home, dear." And again, they're doing this patronizing, like, "Everything's fine," and then she looks at her hands and she starts screaming, and I think her screaming was pretty damn effective. And her makeup, they close up, and it's really, it's good. I mean, she might really be this old. It looked authentic to me, craggy, and it brings it up to close to you, literally. Uh, how horrible it would be to be 103 years old. Like, you're 19, you're fucking your boyfriend one day, the next day you're 103 in a wheelchair. And that was really fucked up. And that was our titular character. So yeah, overall, I liked this movie. Um, Now that I've ruined everything for you, if you don't want to, you don't have to watch it. I might have helped you out, but I do recommend it. I mean, if you like things that slot under any of the things that I slotted it under, 80s movies, Australian genre movies, slightly unconventional and downbeat endings, a few surprises, not many, and the occult setting and all that stuff, and the doom and gloom paranoia where you kind of know it's coming, but you know, um, you kind of know it, but it's not going to have the power of like his eyes. What have you done to his eyes? You know, I keep coming back to Rosemary. I hope for obvious reasons. Um, I've gone way over. So I was going to do one long video or take two short ones and fuse them together, but I think this will be fine. I'm going to do another one though. I'm going to do another Adventures in Streaming. I don't know when I'll shoot it, but it'll be my next thing. So I wouldn't another one like this. Hopefully not as long, but thanks for listening. I just wanted to kind of get back in the saddle, so to speak, and um, I don't know. I have several projects on the slate today. I'd like to record all day and get some content backlog, but can't promise it. But anyway, here we are. I'm gonna do the snazzy opening titles and those cool to me collages that are so fun to make for the thumbnail. And hopefully the channel will continue to grow. I mean, this one might not get that many views, but remind everybody that I'm appreciative of uh, the channel kind of blowing up and expanding and growing. And I'm not just going to give you a thank you video. I'm going to give you more content and content that I think is good. This one probably won't get much attention because probably nobody gives a damn about Allison's birthday, just like the Dark August one I did, or the Blood Quantum one I did. No one cared. Blood Quantum one even got more negatives than positives. So it's like, wow, is it me or the movie? Anyway, take care. See you soon.